Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Computer Scientist channel. Tonight, we're drifting into one of the most pressing questions of our time, a question that sits at the intersection of technology, economics, philosophy, and human dignity. It's a question that keeps some people awake at night, though tonight, we'll let it carry us gently towards sleep. The question is this: will artificial intelligence steal our jobs, or will it free us from work? It's a deceptively simple question, but beneath it lies a tangle of assumptions about value, purpose, identity, and what it means to live a good life. As we explore this question together, we'll wander through economic theory and historical patterns, through philosophical debates about labour and leisure, through the lived experiences of workers whose worlds are changing faster than they can adapt. We'll examine the paradoxes, the promises, and the perils, and perhaps, in the gentle exploration of these ideas, we'll find not answers, but better questions. If you enjoy these quiet journeys into complex topics, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let your body settle. Let your mind open to curiosity without urgency. Let's begin. In the past 2 years, something remarkable and troubling has happened. More than 130,000 workers in the technology sector have lost their jobs. These aren't workers in declining industries or obsolete fields. These are software engineers, data analysts, content moderators, customer service representatives, designers, and project managers in the very companies that are building the artificial intelligence systems reshaping our world. The layoffs have come in waves, sometimes thousands at a time, announced in brief emails or Slack messages that arrive without warning on a Tuesday morning. What makes these layoffs particularly striking is the context in which they're occurring. Many of the same companies eliminating positions are simultaneously announcing record investments in artificial intelligence, celebrating productivity gains, and reporting strong profits. The CEOs who signed the termination notices often frame the cuts as necessary for efficiency, for focus, for the future. The message, explicit or implied, is that the company is becoming more capable with fewer people. The work still gets done, they suggest. It just doesn't require as many humans anymore. This is the 130,000 worker question. It's not abstract. It's not hypothetical. It's 130,000 people who had jobs and skills and mortgage payments and identities tied to their work, now navigating a labour market that increasingly suggests their contributions are optional. Some will find new positions, many already have. But the message has been sent, not just to those 130,000, but to millions of others watching. The message is, you might be next. The paradox at the heart of this moment is worth sitting with. Companies are more productive than ever. They can do more with less. Tasks that once required teams now require individuals. Processes that took weeks now take days. Code that demanded senior engineers can now be drafted by systems that cost pennies per query. By traditional economic logic, this should be unambiguously good. Productivity is the foundation of prosperity. When we can create more value with less effort, everyone should benefit. That's the promise of technology, the story we've told ourselves since the first tools were fashioned from stone. But something feels different this time. The gains from increased productivity aren't flowing evenly. Workers see their colleagues disappear while executives see their compensation packages grow. The tools that promise to make work easier instead make workers more replaceable. The automation that was supposed to eliminate drudgery is also eliminating jobs that people found meaningful, creative, and fulfilling. the liberation feels more like abandonment. This tension between technology as emancipator and technology as threat is ancient, but it takes on new urgency when the technology in question can perform cognitive tasks, not just physical ones, when automation could think as well as act, when the work that seemed uniquely human, the work that required judgment and creativity and context, begins to look automatable too. To understand where we are, we need to look at where we've been. The fear of technological unemployment is not new. It has accompanied every major wave of automation, from the mechanization of agriculture to the electrification of factories to the computerization of offices. And every time the pattern has been similar: initial disruption, painful transition, eventual adaptation, and ultimately the creation of new kinds of work that couldn't have been imagined before the technology arrived. In the early 19th century, skilled textile workers in England smashed the mechanical looms that threatened their livelihoods. History remembers them as Luddites, a term that has become synonymous with irrational fear of progress. But the Luddites weren't opposed to technology as such. They were opposed to the way the technology was being deployed to serve the interests of factory owners while destroying the economic security and social standing of craftspeople. They saw their entire way of life being automated away, and they saw that the gains from automation would not be shared with them. They were right, at least in the short term. The textile workers did lose their jobs. Their skills did become obsolete. The social fabric of their communities did fray. But in the longer term, Britain industrialised, wealth increased, and new forms of employment emerged. The descendants of those Luddites found work in factories, offices, and eventually in service industries that didn't exist in the 1800s. The story we tell about the Luddites is usually a story about the futility of resisting change. But we could also tell it as a story about the very real costs of economic transformation, costs that are often borne by the people least able to afford them. Throughout the 20th century, this pattern repeated. Elevators replaced elevator operators. Automated switchboards replaced telephone operators. ATMs replaced bank tellers, or at least reduced their numbers. Computers replaced secretarial pools and accounting clerks. Each time there was disruption. Each time there was anxiety. And each time, eventually, the economy adjusted. New jobs appeared, often jobs that required the very technologies that had eliminated the old ones. The bank teller became the financial advisor. The secretary became the administrative professional using word processing and spreadsheets. The elevator operator's descendant worked in IT support. This historical pattern is the foundation of the optimistic case about artificial intelligence. Yes, some jobs will be disrupted. Yes, there will be a period of adjustment. But humans are adaptable. Markets are dynamic. New opportunities will emerge. The economy has absorbed every previous wave of automation, and it will absorb this one too. Have faith in human creativity and the invisible hand of the market. This is the argument from historical precedent. But there are reasons to question whether this time might be different. Previous waves of automation primarily affected routine physical tasks or routine cognitive tasks, the kind of work that follows clear rules and repeatable patterns. Artificial intelligence, particularly the kind that has emerged in the past few years, can handle non-routine cognitive tasks. It can write, reason, analyze, synthesize, and create. The boundary between what machines can do and what humans can do is not just moving, it's becoming blurry and perhaps disappearing. There's another difference worth noting: the speed of change. Previous technological revolutions unfolded over generations. A textile worker displaced in 1820 might have struggled, but their children could adapt to the factory system. The pace of change, while faster than anything that came before, still allowed for social adjustment between generations. But artificial intelligence is advancing at a pace measured in months, not decades. Systems that couldn't pass a high school essay test 2 years ago are now passing bar exams and medical boards. The window for adaptation is compressing, and there's a third difference: the comprehensiveness of the potential impact. Previous automation typically affected specific sectors or types of work. Farming was mechanized, then manufacturing, then clerical work, in a sequence that allowed labor to shift from one sector to another. But AI has the potential to affect nearly every sector simultaneously. If machine learning can improve diagnosis, legal research, financial analysis, customer service, content creation, and software development all at once, where do the displaced workers go? These differences don't prove that this time is fundamentally different, but they suggest we should be cautious about assuming the past is a reliable guide to the future. The terrain may have changed in ways that make old maps obsolete. In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes wrote an essay called "Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren." In it, he predicted that technological progress would eventually solve the economic problem, the struggle for subsistence, and that by the early 21st century, people in advanced economies would work perhaps 15 hours per week. The rest of their time would be devoted to leisure, creativity, relationships, and the cultivation of the good life. It was a remarkably optimistic vision, grounded in his observation that productivity had been growing steadily, and that this trend seemed likely to continue. Keynes was right about productivity. We are vastly more productive than the workers of 1930. We can produce more goods and services with less human effort. An individual worker today generates many times the economic output of their great-grandparents. By that measure, we should be able to maintain our standard of living while working far fewer hours. And yet, for most people in developed economies, working hours have not declined as Keynes predicted. In some cases, they've increased. The prosperity has arrived, but not the leisure. Keynes acknowledged that there might be what he called technological unemployment, periods when automation eliminates jobs faster than new ones are created. But he believed this would be a temporary phenomenon, a temporary phase of maladjustment. The economy would eventually rebalance. New wants would be discovered. New industries would emerge. The demand for labor would return, just in different forms. This notion of temporary technological unemployment has become a kind of orthodoxy in economics. Yes, automation displaces workers in the short run, but in the long run, it creates more jobs than it destroys, usually better jobs, jobs that leverage the new technology rather than compete with it. The automobile displaced blacksmiths and buggy whip makers, but it created millions of jobs in manufacturing, maintenance, road construction, and entirely new industries like suburban real estate development and fast food. Creative destruction is painful, but it's the engine of progress. But what if the temporary phase is longer than a human lifetime? What if the maladjustment lasts not years, but decades? Keynes could afford to be sanguine about temporary unemployment because he was thinking on the scale of generations. But individuals don't live on that scale. A 45-year-old software engineer whose skills become obsolete doesn't have generations to wait for new opportunities. They have mortgages and children and maybe 2 decades of working life ahead. For them, temporary is not a meaningful category. And there's a more fundamental question. What if the adjustment doesn't happen at all? What if we've reached a point where technology can perform most economically valuable tasks better and cheaper than humans? In that scenario, the demand for human labor might not return. We might have created systems that no longer need us in the way economies have always needed workers. This is the nightmare scenario, not unemployment as a transition between jobs, but unemployment as a permanent condition for large segments of the population. Economists debate whether this is possible. Most maintain that new forms of work will emerge, as they always have. They point to tasks that seem inherently human: care work, creative work, work that requires physical presence or emotional intelligence or ethical judgment. These, they argue, will be the new frontier of human employment, but others are less certain. They note that many of these inherently human tasks are already being augmented or replaced by AI. Chatbots provide emotional support. Algorithms compose music. Robots perform surgery. The category of things only humans can do keeps shrinking. There's also a question about demand. Even if there are tasks humans can do that machines cannot, will there be enough demand for those tasks to employ everyone? Will there be enough people willing to pay for human-provided services when machine-provided services are available at a fraction of the cost? The market doesn't care about full employment. It cares about efficiency. If machines are more efficient, the market will choose machines. This is where we arrive at a genuinely new possibility in human history: the possibility of abundance without the need for mass employment. We might be able to produce everything we need and much of what we want, with a relatively small number of workers supervising highly automated systems. This could be a utopia: freedom from drudgery, time for human flourishing. Or it could be a dystopia: mass unemployment, economic precarity, the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of those who own the machines. The technology doesn't determine which future we get, our choices do. To understand the future of work in an age of AI, we need to look more carefully at how artificial intelligence is actually affecting employment. And here, we encounter a pattern that's more subtle and perhaps more insidious than the wholesale elimination of jobs. The pattern is what labour economists call task encroachment. AI doesn't usually take an entire job. Instead, it takes pieces of jobs, specific tasks that used to require human judgment or effort. Consider a graphic designer. A few years ago, their work included initial concept sketches, refining designs, creating multiple variations, adjusting layouts, and presenting final products. Today, AI tools can generate initial concepts in seconds. They can create dozens of variations instantly. They can adjust layouts automatically based on design principles. What took a team of designers days can now be done by one designer with AI tools in hours. The designer hasn't been replaced entirely, but the amount of work available for designers has declined. The industry needs fewer of them. Or consider a software developer. AI can now write functional code from natural language descriptions. It can debug existing code. It can suggest optimizations. A developer using these tools is more productive than ever. They can complete projects faster, but that means each project requires fewer developer hours. The work still requires human oversight, human creativity, human understanding of the broader system, but it requires less of it. The job hasn't disappeared, but it's been diminished. This is task encroachment, and it's happening across sectors. Journalists use AI to draft initial versions of articles. Lawyers use AI to do document review. Accountants use AI to categorize transactions. Radiologists use AI to flag suspicious images. In each case, the professional is still necessary, but each professional can handle a larger workload, which means fewer professionals are needed in total. The effect is subtle, but profound. It doesn't show up as mass unemployment, at least not immediately. Instead, it shows up as a softening of the labour market. job openings decrease, hiring slows, freelance rates stagnate or decline. People stay in jobs longer because there are fewer opportunities to move. New graduates struggle to find entry-level positions because companies don't need as many entry-level workers. The work is still being done, but it's being done by fewer people, each equipped with more powerful tools. This creates a kind of death by 1,000 cuts. No single job loss is a catastrophe. No single company's decision to hire 2 people instead of 3 is newsworthy. But aggregated across an economy, the effect is significant. Labour's share of income declines. Workers have less bargaining power. Wages stagnate even as productivity rises. The gains from technology flow to capital, to the owners of the AI systems, rather than to the workers whose productivity has been augmented. There's a paradox here. Workers are told that they need to embrace AI, to use it to enhance their productivity, to stay competitive in a changing market. And this is true. An individual worker who refuses to use AI tools will likely be outcompeted by workers who do. But collectively, workers using AI tools make themselves more replaceable. The company needs fewer of them. The bargaining position of each individual worker weakens. This is a coordination problem. From any individual's perspective, using AI to enhance productivity is rational. From the perspective of workers as a class, enabling their own replacement is self-destructive. But without collective action, without some way to ensure that the gains from productivity are shared, each individual has no choice but to participate in a system that undermines their collective interests. The result is what some economists call gigification at scale. Work becomes more fragmented, more task-based, more precarious. Instead of stable employment, workers piece together income from multiple sources, using platforms that match their skills to specific tasks. They might be working as much as ever, or even more, but the work is unstable, lacks benefits, and provides little security or opportunity for advancement. Everyone works, but nobody works enough. Everyone is busy, but nobody is secure. This vision of fragmented work is already visible in sectors of the economy. The journalist who supplements shrinking staff positions with freelance assignments. The software developer who does contract work between full-time jobs. The graphic designer who hustles for clients on platforms that take a percentage of every transaction. The college professor who teaches at multiple institutions without tenure or benefits. These aren't failures of individual ambition. They're symptoms of a labour market that increasingly doesn't need long-term employment relationships. Automation has enabled this shift. When companies can use AI to handle base workloads and surge capacity, they have less need for permanent staff. They can operate with a small core of employees and a large periphery of contractors and freelancers who can be brought in when needed and released when demand slackens. This is more efficient from the company's perspective. It's more flexible. It reduces labour costs and commitments, but it transfers risk from employers to workers, from institutions to individuals. The question we face is whether this is the inevitable future of work, or whether it's a choice we're making, often implicitly, through policy decisions, corporate strategies, and cultural norms. Is the fragmentation of work a technological necessity, or a social construction that serves certain interests at the expense of others? The answer matters because it determines whether there's anything we can do about it. Beneath the economic questions about automation and employment lies a deeper philosophical question. Why do we work? What purpose does work serve in human life? Is it merely a means to earn income, or does it provide something more fundamental to human flourishing? For much of human history, work has been necessary for survival. You worked to eat, to have shelter, to provide for your family. But in societies that have achieved a degree of affluence, work has taken on other meanings. It provides structure to our days. It gives us a sense of purpose and identity. It connects us to communities and to endeavours larger than ourselves. It offers opportunities to develop skills, to create things, to solve problems, to contribute. When people ask, "What do you do?" they're asking about your work because your work is understood to be central to who you are. This connection between work and identity is culturally constructed, but it's also deeply embedded. The Protestant work ethic, the idea that work is virtuous and idleness is sinful, has shaped Western attitudes for centuries. Even people who don't consciously subscribe to this ethic often feel guilty about not being productive. We valorize busyness. We judge people who don't work, even if they have other means of support, as lacking purpose or discipline. Our language reveals our assumptions. We talk about making a living as if life itself is something we have to earn through labour. Philosophers have debated the nature and value of work for millennia. Aristotle distinguished between labour, which is necessary but not ennobling, and contemplation, which is the highest human activity. For Aristotle, the goal of a good society was to free citizens from the necessity of labour so they could engage in politics, philosophy, and the cultivation of virtue. Of course, in Aristotle's world, this freedom depended on the labour of slaves and women, a solution that is morally abhorrent to us now. But the question remains, if technology could provide the freedom Aristotle imagined, but without requiring some humans to be subordinated to others, would that be desirable? Marx had a different view. He saw labour not as a curse, but as a fundamental human activity, the way we transform the world and realise our potential. But he distinguished between alienated labour, work that is imposed and that serves the interests of others, and free creative labour, work that we choose and that expresses our nature. Under capitalism, Marx argued, work is alienated. We don't control what we produce or how we produce it. We sell our labour power, and in doing so, we become estranged from our own activity, from the products of our labour, and from our fellow workers. The problem isn't work itself, but the conditions under which we work. This Marxist analysis suggests a very different question about automation. If work under capitalism is alienating, then maybe automation that reduces the need for such work is liberating. But if work is also the means by which we develop our capacities and shape the world, then automation that removes us from productive activity is impoverishing. The contradiction is that the same technology that could free us from drudgery could also deprive us of meaningful engagement with the world. Modern psychologists have studied what makes work meaningful. The research suggests that people find meaning in work that allows them to use their skills, that provides autonomy and control, that connects them to a larger purpose, and that is recognized and valued by others. Money matters, but beyond a certain threshold, it's not the primary determinant of job satisfaction. People want to feel that their work matters, that they're good at it, and that they have some say in how it's done. This presents a challenge for automation. If AI takes over the most routine and tedious aspects of work, it could make jobs more meaningful by allowing people to focus on the parts that require creativity, judgment, and human connection. But if AI takes over the parts of work that people find most satisfying, the parts that require skill and allow for mastery, then what's left might be less meaningful than what came before. The remnants of jobs, the tasks that are too awkward or too rare for AI to handle efficiently, might be the least fulfilling aspects of work. There's also the question of recognition. If AI does the impressive parts of a job, drafting the document, creating the design, writing the code, and humans just review and tweak, does the human's contribution still feel valuable? There's a psychological difference between being the primary creator and being the editor, even if both roles require skill. Our sense of accomplishment is tied to our sense of authorship. If we're just tweaking what a machine produced, do we feel the same pride in the result? This matters for human dignity. There's a long tradition in political philosophy that ties dignity to economic independence and productive contribution. To be a full member of society, you must be able to support yourself and contribute to the common good. Dependence in this view is degrading. It makes you subordinate to the will of others, whether that's a feudal lord, a welfare bureaucracy, or a universal basic income dispensing entity. If technological unemployment becomes widespread, if large numbers of people simply aren't needed in the economy, what happens to this source of dignity? Do we find new foundations for human worth, divorced from economic contribution? Do we reconceptualize what it means to contribute, valuing care work, community building, artistic creation, and other activities that might not be compensated in market terms? Or do we end up with a society divided into a productive class and a dependent class, with all the implications for status and power that such a division entails? These aren't just abstract philosophical questions. They're about how people experience their lives, how they understand their place in the world, and how communities hold together or fall apart. The economic question of unemployment is also a social and psychological question about meaning, purpose, and dignity. Let's return to the 130,000 workers who lost their jobs in tech layoffs. The companies they worked for are more productive than ever. The work they did is still being done, but it's being done more efficiently with fewer people, aided by the very technologies many of them helped to build. This is the productivity paradox. Organizations become more capable while workers become more precarious. Productivity in economic terms measures output per unit of input. When productivity rises, we can produce more goods and services with the same amount of labor, or the same amount of goods and services with less labor. Throughout most of the 20th century, productivity gains were shared, imperfectly but meaningfully, between capital and labor. When companies became more productive, profits rose, but so did wages. Workers captured some of the value they helped to create. But since the 1980s, this relationship has weakened. Productivity has continued to rise, but wages for most workers have stagnated. The gains from increased efficiency have flowed primarily to shareholders and executives. Labor's share of income has declined. The bargain that underpinned mid-20th century capitalism, that workers would share in productivity gains, has eroded. Automation and AI are accelerating this trend. When productivity increases come from machines rather than human effort, it's easier for capital to capture the gains. The machine doesn't negotiate for higher wages, it doesn't form unions, it doesn't quit to find better opportunities. As more of the productive capacity resides in capital rather than labor, the balance of power shifts. This shift has profound implications. In a world where labor is scarce and valuable, workers have bargaining power. They can demand better wages, better conditions, more security. But in a world where labor is abundant and machines can perform many tasks, that bargaining power diminishes. Workers compete with each other and with automation for a shrinking pool of opportunities. Employers can be more selective, more demanding, less generous. The labor market becomes a buyer's market. We see this in the tech industry layoffs. Companies that are financially healthy, that are growing their revenues and their capabilities, are nonetheless reducing headcount. They don't need as many workers as they once did. The workers they retain are asked to do more, to be more flexible, to continuously upskill to remain relevant. Job security becomes a relic of an earlier era. The implicit social contract, loyalty in exchange for stability, disappears. This creates a kind of anxiety that pervades the modern workplace. Workers know they're potentially replaceable. They see colleagues disappear. They hear about AI systems that can do parts of their job. They're told to embrace these tools, to become more productive, to remain competitive. But they also understand that becoming more productive might make them expendable. The situation generates a constant low-level stress, a sense of precarity that affects not just economic welfare but mental health and social cohesion. From the perspective of a company, the logic of automation is compelling. Reduce costs, increase speed, improve consistency, scale capabilities without proportionately scaling headcount. These aren't evil objectives. They're rational responses to competitive pressures and shareholder demands. Especially for publicly traded companies, there's enormous pressure to maximize returns. Labor is typically the largest expense. If technology can reduce that expense while maintaining or increasing output, it would be irrational not to deploy it. But this individual rationality can lead to collective irrationality. If every company automates to reduce labor costs, who will have the income to buy the products and services the companies produce? This is a version of the paradox Henry Ford understood when he paid his workers enough to buy his cars. An economy needs consumers. Consumers need income. Income for most people comes from work. If automation eliminates work, where does the consumption capacity come from? Economists have responses to this. They point out that automation reduces costs, which can lead to lower prices, which increases consumers' purchasing power. They note that freed capital can be invested in new ventures that create new jobs. They argue that technological progress creates new wants and new industries. The economy is dynamic, not static. But these mechanisms operate on timescales that might be longer than the lives of displaced workers, and they assume a level of market flexibility and worker mobility that might not exist, especially during rapid technological transitions. There's also a distributional question that markets alone don't answer. Even if aggregate wealth increases, how is that wealth distributed? If the gains from automation flow primarily to a small class of capital owners and highly skilled workers, while the majority sees stagnant or declining incomes, the result is inequality on a scale that can destabilize societies. We're already seeing some of this. In many developed economies, wealth inequality has reached levels not seen since the Gilded Age. The top 1% captures a growing share of total income. The middle class is shrinking. Economic mobility, the ability to move up the income ladder through work and effort, is declining. Automation doesn't cause these trends by itself, but it exacerbates them. When returns to capital are high and returns to labor are low, wealth concentrates among those who own capital. In a highly automated economy, the most valuable assets are algorithms, data, and platforms. These are owned by a small number of individuals and companies. The programmers and data scientists who create and maintain these systems are well compensated, but they are a tiny fraction of the workforce. Everyone else is competing for a share of whatever value labor can still claim. This pattern raises questions about the sustainability of the current economic model. Capitalism has historically depended on broad-based consumption funded by wages. If wages decline as a share of the economy, what happens to demand? Do we end up in a world where a small elite produces and consumes, while the majority survives on transfers from the state or charity from the rich. Such a world might be economically functional in a narrow sense, but it would be politically and socially unstable. This brings us to one of the most provocative responses to the automation challenge: the argument that work itself is overrated, that much of what we call employment is actually bullshit jobs that serve no real social purpose, and that automation, far from being a threat, is an opportunity to free humanity from the tyranny of meaningless labour. The anthropologist David Graeber coined the term bullshit jobs to describe employment that even the people doing it recognise as pointless. Administrative roles that exist only to manage other administrators, compliance officers ensuring compliance with regulations that serve no clear purpose, consultants who produce reports no one reads, middle managers whose primary function is to justify their own existence. Graeber argued that a significant portion of contemporary employment falls into this category, created not because the work is needed, but to maintain an ideological commitment to full employment and to preserve hierarchies of power and status. If Graeber is right, then automation that eliminates bullshit jobs is purely beneficial. Nobody should mourn the loss of work that was always meaningless. The real problem is that our economic system doesn't have a mechanism for people to survive without employment, even employment that serves no purpose. So we're trapped in a cycle where we create jobs for the sake of having jobs, and people spend their lives doing things that don't matter just so they can claim a wage. This critique resonates with many people's experience of modern work. The meetings that could have been emails, the forms that serve no purpose except to generate other forms, the elaborate hierarchies where decisions must pass through multiple layers of approval, not because the layers add value, but because they exist and must be seen to be relevant. The sensation that much of white-collar work, especially in large organisations, is theatre, a performance of busyness that obscures the fact that actual productive activity could be accomplished in a fraction of the time. But even if we accept that some work is meaningless, it doesn't follow that eliminating it is straightforward. People's identities are wrapped up in their jobs, bullshit or not. Their social connections, their routines, their sense of status and competence, all derive from work, regardless of whether that work is objectively useful. Remove the job, and you remove not just the income but a scaffold that structures life. The meaning might be false, but its psychological and social functions are real. There's also a question about who decides which jobs are bullshit. From one perspective, a corporate lawyer's work is essential, protecting the company from liability and ensuring compliance with regulations. From another perspective, much of what corporate lawyers do is socially wasteful, creating no value but merely navigating systems of artificial complexity that exist primarily to employ corporate lawyers. Similarly, some see social media management as crucial to modern commerce, while others see it as a parasitic activity that exploits human psychology for profit. Value is contextual and contested. Still, the broader point stands. If automation primarily eliminates work that's tedious, repetitive, or meaningless, and if we can find ways to support people economically without requiring them to perform such work, then automation is liberating. This is the post-work vision, a world where people are free to pursue activities they find meaningful without the constraint of having to earn a living. What would people do in a post-work world? The pessimistic view is that most people would languish, lacking the structure and purpose that work provides. They'd fall into idleness, addiction, depression. The optimistic view is that people would pursue education, art, community building, care for family and friends, hobbies, volunteering, all the activities we currently have to squeeze into the margins of lives dominated by paid employment. They do what they actually want to do, rather than what they must do to survive. Evidence exists for both views. Some people who find themselves with abundant free time, whether through retirement, unemployment, or independent wealth, do struggle. They report feeling aimless and unhappy, but others flourish. They take up painting, learn languages, mentor young people, write novels, garden, travel, deepen relationships. The difference seems to depend on individual psychology, social support, and the availability of meaningful activities that provide structure and purpose even when disconnected from wage earning. The post-work vision usually requires some form of economic guarantee, a way for people to meet their material needs without employment. The most discussed proposal is universal basic income, a policy where the government provides all citizens with a regular cash payment sufficient to cover basic living expenses, no strings attached. UBI has supporters across the political spectrum, though for different reasons. On the left, UBI is seen as a response to technological unemployment and a way to redistribute the gains from automation more equitably. If machines are doing the work, and the value they create flows to capital owners, then taxing those owners and distributing the proceeds as UBI ensures that everyone benefits from productivity gains. It's a form of social dividend, acknowledging that the technologies enabling automation were built on centuries of cumulative knowledge and infrastructure, public goods that belong to everyone. On the right, some support UBI as a way to simplify the welfare state and increase individual freedom, instead of a complex bureaucracy determining who qualifies for which benefits and imposing conditions on recipients. Just give everyone money and let them make their own choices. It's more efficient and more respectful of personal autonomy. It also appeals to libertarian instincts about reducing government interference in people's lives. Critics of UBI point to several concerns. First, the cost. Providing every adult with enough money to live on would require enormous tax revenues, likely necessitating much higher taxes on the wealthy or on capital. This might be politically feasible in some contexts, but in many countries it would face fierce resistance. Second, the potential for inflation. If everyone receives more money but the supply of goods and services doesn't increase proportionately, prices might rise, cancelling out the benefit. Third, the incentive effects. Would people still work if they didn't have to? Would companies still innovate and invest if taxes consumed a large share of returns? There are responses to all these objections. The cost of UBI could be offset by eliminating existing welfare programs, though this raises equity concerns if the UBI isn't sufficient to replace more generous targeted benefits. Inflation could be managed through monetary policy, and by the fact that automation should be reducing costs and increasing supply. And empirical studies of UBI-like programs suggest that most people continue to work, though they might work fewer hours or be more selective about jobs. The fear that everyone would quit and become idle doesn't match the evidence. But perhaps the deepest objection to UBI is that it doesn't address the meaning question. Even if people have enough money to survive, do they have enough purpose to thrive? Money can buy food and shelter, but it can't buy the sense of contribution and competence that meaningful work provides. A UBI might prevent material deprivation, but it might not prevent existential despair. This is where alternative visions of post-work society emphasize not just income guarantees, but social infrastructure that enables meaningful activity outside of paid employment. What if communities had robust networks of makerspaces, gardens, performance venues, sports leagues, educational opportunities, and volunteer organisations? What if caregiving for children, the elderly, the sick, was recognised and supported as valuable work, even if not compensated through traditional wages? What if the arts were seen not as a luxury for the elite, but as a democratic activity everyone could participate in? In this vision, people wouldn't be idle. They'd be busy, but with activities they chose that connected them to their communities, that developed their capacities. The boundary between work and leisure would blur. Activities would be valued for their intrinsic worth, not just their market price. Economic security would be a foundation for human flourishing, not an end in itself. This vision is appealing, but it requires more than just policy changes. It requires cultural transformation. We'd have to unlearn centuries of conditioning that equates value with paid employment. We'd have to build institutions and communities that provide meaning outside of market relations. We'd have to trust that people, given the freedom and resources, would generally choose to do things that are enriching for themselves and beneficial for others. This might be naive, but it might also be a bet worth making, especially if the alternative is mass unemployment without social support. There's another dimension to the geography of work that automation and AI are transforming. The rise of remote work and its intersection with artificial intelligence creates a kind of double disruption. For knowledge workers, the pandemic accelerated a shift that was already underway. Work became decoupled from physical location. If you can do your job from anywhere, your employer can hire from anywhere. And if your employer can hire from anywhere, they can optimize for cost, skill, or other factors that might not favor you. This is the phenomenon of global labor arbitrage. If a company based in San Francisco can hire a software engineer in Bangalore or Sao Paulo who can do comparable work for a fraction of the cost, why wouldn't they? The infrastructure exists, communication tools have improved, cultural and time zone differences can be managed. The primary barrier to global hiring has been quality concerns and coordination costs, but these are eroding. And when AI tools enable workers to be more productive, the calculus shifts further. A developer in a lower-cost region using AI tools might be as productive as a more expensive developer in a high-cost city. This puts workers in expensive regions in a difficult position. They're competing not just with local peers, but with a global talent pool. Their cost of living might be higher, but that's not the employer's concern, especially for remote positions. The result is downward pressure on wages and opportunities for workers in high-cost areas, and perhaps upward pressure in lower-cost areas, though the power dynamics of global capital markets mean the gains aren't distributed evenly. For some workers, remote work combined with AI is liberating. They can live where they choose, often in lower-cost areas, and access opportunities that previously required relocating to expensive cities. They can achieve better work-life balance, save money, and enjoy higher quality of life. The anywhere worker is the beneficiary of these changes, able to leverage global opportunities while maintaining local roots. But for many, the anywhere worker phenomenon is threatening. If work can be done from anywhere, it can be done by anyone, anywhere. Job security declines. Geographic communities that once formed around industries or companies hollow out. The social fabric that connected workplace to place phrase. Regional economies that depended on concentrations of high-wage workers suffer. The coffee shops, restaurants and services that served office workers close. The tax base that funded schools and infrastructure erodes. This is already visible in cities that experience tech booms followed by remote work adoption. Office buildings stand partially empty. Retail districts struggle. Meanwhile, some smaller cities and rural areas see influxes of remote workers, which brings new vitality but also drives up housing costs and changes the character of communities. The geography of work is being redrawn, and not everyone benefits from the new map. AI accelerates these dynamics by making remote coordination more efficient. Real-time translation breaks language barriers. AI-powered project management tools track progress and coordinate teams across time zones. Virtual assistants schedule meetings and handle administrative tasks. The friction of distance decreases, which means there's less reason to prefer local workers over remote ones, and less reason to cluster workers in physical locations. This has implications for regional inequality. Historically, certain regions accumulated advantages through clustering effects. Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley because talent, capital, and ideas concentrated there, creating a virtuous cycle of innovation and growth. But if clustering matters less because work can be distributed, does that mean other regions can compete more effectively? Or does it mean that leading regions can extract talent from everywhere without having to build local ecosystems, further concentrating power while dispersing production? The answer probably depends on what kinds of work we're talking about. For purely digital work, the possibility of decentralized production increases. But for work that requires physical presence, or that benefits from face-to-face collaboration, or that depends on local knowledge and networks, clustering might still matter. And for strategic decision-making and control, concentration might persist or even increase, even as execution becomes distributed. The global headquarters might remain in major cities, while the actual work happens everywhere and nowhere. This creates a new kind of stratification, not just between individuals but between regions. Some places become command centers, where the people who own and control AI systems live and make decisions. Other places become execution zones, where people carry out tasks coordinated by AI systems designed elsewhere. And some places become simply irrelevant, lacking the infrastructure or skills to participate in the new economy at all. This is not a hopeful vision for economic development or social cohesion. The policy responses to these geographic disruptions are unclear. Do we try to preserve place-based communities through incentives and regulations that discourage offshoring and remote work? Do we accept that work will be increasingly locationless and focus on ensuring that everyone has access to the digital infrastructure and skills needed to participate? Do we redistribute resources from winning regions to losing ones to maintain some degree of balance? Each approach has advocates and critics, and each involves trade-offs between efficiency, equity, and other values. What's clear is that automation and remote work together create a kind of double vulnerability for workers. They're competing with AI systems that can perform tasks, and they're competing with workers elsewhere who might do the same tasks for less. The bargaining position of any individual worker becomes tenuous. Only workers with truly unique skills, or those in jobs that require physical presence and can't be easily automated, retain strong positions. For everyone else, work becomes precarious. When confronted with concerns about technological unemployment, a common response is, people just need to adapt. They need to upskill, reskill, learn to work with AI rather than competing against it. Education and training in this view are the solutions to automation anxiety. If workers can't find jobs with their current skills, they should acquire new skills. The problem isn't automation, it's an insufficiently adaptable workforce. There's truth in this. Adaptation has been the human story throughout history. We've always had to learn new skills as technologies and economies evolved. The farmers who became factory workers, the factory workers who became office workers, the office workers who became knowledge workers, all had to adapt. And many succeeded. Education has been the ladder of opportunity, the means by which people improve their circumstances and their children's prospects. But there are reasons to doubt that adaptation can occur at the pace and scale that AI-driven change might require. First, there's the speed issue. Previous technological transitions unfolded over generations. People didn't have to retrain. Their children learned different skills. But if AI capabilities are doubling or improving dramatically every few years, the window for adaptation compresses. A skill learned today might be obsolete in 5 years. Continuous learning becomes not a one-time adjustment, but a permanent state, and not everyone has the capacity or resources for that. Second, there's the question of what skills to learn. The traditional advice has been to move up the skill ladder, to acquire more education and more specialized knowledge. But AI is increasingly capable in domains that require advanced education. It can perform well on medical board exams, bar exams, and graduate-level tests. It can write code, analyze data, and generate insights from complex information. The cognitive skills that were supposed to be automation-proof are looking more vulnerable than expected. Some argue that the solution is to focus on uniquely human skills: creativity, emotional intelligence, complex problem-solving, ethical judgment. These are supposedly the enduring human advantages, but this advice is vague and possibly wishful. AI systems are already demonstrating creativity in generating art, music, and writing. They're being used in therapeutic context, engaging with people emotionally. They're solving complex problems across domains. The boundary of uniquely human keeps retreating. Moreover, even if we can identify skills that remain valuable, can everyone acquire them? Human cognitive abilities are diverse. Not everyone can become a creative problem solver or an emotionally intelligent counselor, just as not everyone can become a professional athlete. If the future of work requires capacities that only some people possess in abundance, what happens to everyone else? Do we accept a stratified society where only the cognitively gifted can earn a living, while others depend on social support? There's also an equity dimension. Acquiring new skills requires time, money, and often institutional support. People who are already employed in stable jobs with supportive employers can pursue training and development. But people who've been displaced, who are struggling financially, who have family responsibilities or health challenges, face enormous barriers to reskilling. The people who most need to adapt are often the least able to do so. Educational institutions are slow to change. The programs available today are often designed for the economy of yesterday. By the time curricula are updated to reflect new needs, the needs have changed again. And there's a mismatch between the skills that are easy to teach and certify and the skills that are actually valuable in a rapidly changing economy. Credentialism focuses on degrees and certificates, but these might be poor proxies for adaptability and practical competence. Community colleges and vocational programs are often cited as solutions, and they do important work, but they're underfunded and overwhelmed. The scale of potential displacement from AI could be far larger than these institutions can handle, and the jobs they train people for might themselves be automated away before students complete their programs. Training people for jobs that don't exist yet is a challenge even well-resourced educational systems struggle with. Then there's the psychological dimension. Learning new skills as an adult is difficult, especially if you're starting from scratch in an unfamiliar domain. It requires humility, persistence, and often a willingness to experience failure. For people who've built identities around their existing competencies, retraining can feel like a loss of self, not just a practical adjustment. A 50-year-old accountant whose skills are being automated away might be able to learn to be a home health aide, But it's not just about acquiring new technical skills. It's about reimagining oneself in a role with different status, different rewards, different meanings. The adaptation narrative also tends to individualize what is a structural problem. If unemployment rises due to automation, the response shouldn't be just, everyone needs to retrain. It should also include questions about how we organize the economy, how we distribute the gains from productivity, and what social support systems we need for people during transitions. Placing the entire burden of adaptation on individuals is both unfair and impractical. This doesn't mean adaptation and education are irrelevant. They're crucial. But they're not sufficient. We need both better support for individual adaptation and better social structures that don't leave people behind when their current skills become less valuable. The myth we need to dispel is that adaptation alone can solve the challenges of automation. It can't, especially not at the pace and scale we might be facing. Beyond the economic disruptions and the questions about meaning and adaptation, there's another dimension to AI in the workplace that deserves attention. The way AI is changing the nature of management and control. Artificial intelligence is not just replacing workers, it's also becoming a tool for supervising them, evaluating them, and directing their activities. The result is a transformation in the relationship between workers and employers, one that shifts power and reduces autonomy in ways that might be more consequential than job loss. This is sometimes called algorithmic management or digital Taylorism, a reference to Frederick Taylor's early 20th century ideas about scientific management. Taylor believed that work could be optimized by breaking tasks into small components, timing and measuring each one, and enforcing standardized procedures. Workers were to be managed like machines, their movements and efforts controlled for maximum efficiency. AI enables a new, more sophisticated version of this approach. Consider the gig economy platforms Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, and others. Workers on these platforms are directed by algorithms that assign tasks, determine routes, set prices, and evaluate performance. The algorithms decide which delivery person gets which order, optimizing for speed and cost. They track every movement, every delay, every customer interaction. They can deactivate workers who fall below performance thresholds, often with minimal human oversight. The algorithm is the boss, and it's a boss that never sleeps, never negotiates, and never explains its decisions. This model is spreading beyond gig work into traditional employment. Warehouses use algorithms to assign tasks and track productivity, monitoring how quickly workers pick and pack items, measuring their movements to the second. Call centers use AI to listen to conversations, evaluate tone and script adherence, and provide real-time coaching. Retailers use algorithms to schedule shifts, often with minimal advance notice, optimizing for predicted customer traffic rather than worker convenience. The ostensible benefit of algorithmic management is efficiency. AI can optimize in ways human managers can't, processing vast amounts of data to make better decisions about resource allocation. It's objective, not subject to bias or favoritism. It treats everyone according to the same metrics, and it allows companies to coordinate complex operations at scale, managing thousands of workers across distributed locations. But there are significant costs. Algorithmic management often reduces worker autonomy and discretion. Instead of using judgment to navigate situations, workers follow algorithmic directives. Their work becomes more prescribed, more monitored, more controlled. The pace of work can be relentless, set by systems optimized for efficiency rather than human sustainability. Workers report feeling like extensions of machines, surveilled and pressured in ways that are psychologically exhausting, there's also a lack of transparency and accountability. Workers often don't know how algorithms are evaluating them or why they receive certain assignments. They can't appeal to a human manager who might understand context or make exceptions. The algorithm is inscrutable, a black box that issues commands and renders judgments without explanation. This creates a kind of powerlessness, a feeling that you're subject to forces you can't understand or influence. The data collected through algorithmic management raises privacy concerns as well. Employers might know not just what you accomplish, but how you accomplish it, where you go, how long you spend in the bathroom, what your facial expressions are, what your tone of voice suggests about your mood. This surveillance extends beyond the workplace, as algorithms optimize schedules based on predictions about when you'll be most productive, regardless of how this affects your personal life. These dynamics have implications for worker organizing. How do you negotiate with an algorithm? How do you go on strike against a system that can simply reallocate tasks to other workers or to AI? How do you build solidarity when work is atomized and directed by impersonal systems? Traditional labor organizing depended on workers coming together in physical spaces, recognizing common interests and collectively bargaining with employers. Algorithmic management fragments work and obscures the human relationships involved, making organization more difficult. Some jurisdictions are beginning to regulate algorithmic management, requiring transparency about how algorithms make decisions, giving workers rights to appeal, or imposing constraints on surveillance. But these efforts are in early stages, and they face opposition from companies that view algorithmic control as essential to their business models. The legal frameworks for employment were developed in an era of human managers and traditional workplaces. They're struggling to adapt to algorithmic bosses and platformized work. The deeper question is what kind of work relationships we want. Do we want workplaces where every moment is tracked and optimized, where workers are managed by systems that treat them as resources to be allocated? Or do we want workplaces that preserve some degree of autonomy, trust, and human judgment? The answer has implications not just for productivity, but for human dignity and the quality of work life. AI in management can be used in different ways. It could be used to reduce drudgery and support workers, providing them with tools and insights that make their work easier and more effective. Or it could be used to squeeze every bit of productivity from workers, monitoring and controlling them in ways that are dehumanizing. The technology doesn't determine which path we take, but unless we're deliberate about resisting the more dystopian possibilities, the pressures of competition and profit maximization will likely push us toward greater surveillance and control. As we contemplate the future of work in an age of artificial intelligence, it's worth stepping back and asking what kind of future we're actually building. The technological possibilities are vast, but technology alone doesn't determine outcomes. The future depends on choices, on values, on power, and on the institutions and policies we construct. There are multiple possible futures, and which one we get depends on the decisions we make now. One possible future is what we might call the concentrated prosperity scenario. In this future, AI drives enormous productivity gains, but those gains flow primarily to a small class of people: the owners of AI systems, the platforms that deploy them, and the highly skilled workers who design and maintain them. The economy grows, measured by aggregate output, but most people don't share in that growth. Employment becomes increasingly precarious. Wages stagnate or decline for all but the elite. Wealth inequality reaches levels that strain social cohesion. In this scenario, there might still be jobs, but they're divided into two categories: high skill, high pay positions that require expertise in working with AI systems, and low skill, low pay positions that do the work AI can't or won't do, like caregiving, cleaning, and manual labor in complex environments. The middle, the jobs that provided stable middle-class lives in the 20th century, hollows out. Social mobility declines as the barriers to entering the elite become insurmountable for most. This future isn't determined by technological necessity. It's the result of policy choices that favor capital over labor, that allow concentration of wealth and power, that underfund education and social support, that treat unemployment as a personal failure rather than a systemic challenge. Some of these policies are explicit, like tax laws that advantage investment income over wage income. Others are implicit, embedded in assumptions about free markets and limited government that shape default responses to economic change. The concentrated prosperity scenario is dystopian for most people, but it's not unstable in the short term. History shows that highly unequal societies can persist for generations, especially if they have effective mechanisms for social control. But over time, such societies tend to generate tensions that eventually lead to conflict, reform, or collapse. The question is whether we'll recognize the trajectory early enough to change course, or whether we'll sleepwalk into a future that serves few and impoverishes many. A second possible future is the distributed prosperity scenario. In this one, the gains from AI are shared more broadly through deliberate policy interventions. Progressive taxation ensures that automation's benefits don't just flow to capital owners. Social safety nets, possibly including universal basic income, provide security for workers during transitions. Investment in public goods, education, healthcare, infrastructure rises. Labor has a voice in how AI is deployed in workplaces, preventing the worst abuses of algorithmic management. In this future, work still exists, but it's more humane and more flexible. People work fewer hours but maintain decent standards of living. There's stronger social support for caregiving, education, and community activities that don't generate market income. The arts and culture flourish as more people have time and resources to pursue creative endeavors. Technology serves human flourishing rather than just economic efficiency. This scenario requires active choices to tax wealth and capital gains, to strengthen labor protections and worker organizations, to invest in education and retraining, to build social infrastructure that provides meaning outside of paid employment, to regulate how AI can be used in workplaces, and to treat technological change as a collective challenge requiring coordinated responses rather than individual adaptations. It's not utopian. There would still be conflicts, inequalities, and problems to solve. But it's a future where technology genuinely improves lives rather than concentrating power and leaving most people more precarious. The challenge is that distributed prosperity requires political will and collective action, which are difficult to sustain in polarized, fragmented societies. It requires people to believe that alternative futures are possible and worth fighting for. A third possible future, more speculative, is what we might call the transformation scenario. In this future, AI becomes so capable that it can perform nearly all economically valuable tasks. Human labor becomes largely unnecessary for production. This could be catastrophic if we maintain current economic structures where income depends on employment. But it could also be liberating if we fundamentally restructure how we think about work, value, and distribution. In the transformation scenario, society moves fully post-work. Not everyone works less, which is the distributed prosperity scenario, but almost nobody needs to work for income at all. Economic production is highly automated, and the output is distributed through mechanisms that aren't tied to labour contribution. This might look like a very generous UBI, or like direct provision of goods and services, or like some other arrangement we haven't imagined yet. What would people do in such a world? The optimistic vision is that, freed from economic necessity, people would pursue activities that are meaningful to them: art, science, philosophy, relationships, community building, exploration, spiritual practice. Work would still exist, but it would be chosen rather than compelled, pursued for its intrinsic value rather than for economic survival. Society would need to figure out how to provide structure, purpose, and identity in new ways. But with economic security as a foundation, human creativity could flourish. The pessimistic version of transformation is grimmer. If most people aren't needed economically, why would those who control resources share them? You might end up with a small elite living in abundance, surrounded by a vast population kept at subsistence through minimal transfers, entertained by virtual realities, pacified by surveillance and control. Human life continues, but not in ways we'd consider dignified or flourishing. This is the dystopia of uselessness, where people exist but don't matter. Which version of transformation we get, if we get any version at all, depends again on power and politics. If ordinary people have sufficient political power to demand that the fruits of automation be shared, the optimistic version becomes possible. If power becomes too concentrated, if democratic institutions fail, if surveillance and control become sufficiently sophisticated, the pessimistic version becomes more likely. The technology itself is neutral, but the context in which it's deployed is not. The transformation scenario might seem far-fetched. Perhaps AI will never become capable enough to eliminate the need for human labour entirely. Perhaps there are tasks that will always require human involvement. But the trajectory of AI progress over the past few years has been startling, and extrapolating that trajectory forward suggests that very high levels of capability might arrive sooner than many expect. Even if full transformation doesn't happen, we might get close enough that its shadow affects how we think about work and value. None of these futures is inevitable. We're not passengers on a train moving toward a predetermined destination. We're participants in shaping what comes next. The technological possibilities expand, but which possibilities we actualize depends on the choices we make individually and collectively. Do we accept increasing inequality as a natural consequence of technological progress, or do we insist on redistribution? Do we allow AI to be used for surveillance and control of workers, or do we regulate its use to protect autonomy and dignity? Do we maintain the fiction that everyone must work to deserve survival, or do we decouple survival from employment? These questions don't have purely technical answers. They're moral and political questions about what kind of society we want to live in, what obligations we have to each other, and what values we prioritize. Efficiency is a value, but so are equity, security, autonomy, and solidarity. When these values conflict, which ones take precedence? The answers we give through policy choices, cultural norms, and individual actions will determine which future we get. There are also questions about who gets to decide. Right now, many of the most consequential choices about AI deployment are being made by private companies, motivated by profit and shaped by competitive pressures. Governments regulate at the margins but struggle to keep pace with rapid technological change. Workers and communities affected by AI have little voice in how it's designed or deployed. Democratic input into technological development is limited. If we want futures that serve broad interest rather than narrow ones, we need more democratic governance of technology. This could take many forms: stronger labour representation in companies, community input into how automation is implemented, public investment in AI research directed toward public goods, regulations that require assessment of social impacts before deployment, or new institutions specifically designed to govern AI systems. The goal is not to stop technological progress, but to steer it toward ends that most people would endorse if they had meaningful say in the matter. This is difficult because technology and capitalism tend toward concentration. Network effects and economies of scale give advantages to large platforms. The data needed to train AI systems accumulates with those who already have market power. The capital required for cutting-edge AI research is available mainly to wealthy companies and investors. These dynamics create pressures toward oligopoly or monopoly, and concentrated economic power often translates into political power, making democratic accountability harder to achieve. But difficulty isn't impossibility. Societies have regulated powerful technologies before. We've broken up monopolies, imposed safety standards, required environmental reviews, and created social insurance systems. The challenge with AI is that it's moving fast and its implications are complex, but that's an argument for urgency and attention, not for passivity. If we wait until AI has restructured the economy completely, our options for shaping outcomes will be more limited. There's also a role for cultural change. Many of our assumptions about work, value, and identity are culturally constructed. We could construct them differently. We could cultivate a culture that values care work, community contribution, artistic creation, and personal development as much as market productivity. We could weaken the Protestant work ethic's hold on our imaginations and embrace visions of human flourishing that don't centre on labour. We could build institutions, festivals, rituals, and narratives that provide meaning and structure outside of employment. This kind of cultural transformation is slow and difficult, but it's not impossible. Cultures do change. Our ancestors' assumptions about social hierarchy, gender roles, and moral obligations differ significantly from ours. Future generations might look back at our obsession with work and productivity with the same puzzlement we feel looking at earlier societies' obsessions with honour or piety. The question is whether we can accelerate cultural change to keep pace with technological change, or whether we'll be trapped in outdated frameworks even as the material conditions that generated them disappear. Individual choices matter too. How we talk about work, what we model for young people, what we celebrate and what we critique, how we support those who've lost jobs, whether we demand more from political leaders and corporations. These everyday actions aggregate into cultural momentum. Change doesn't happen all at once through a single policy or invention. It happens through countless small shifts in how people think and act, accumulating over time into transformation. As we near the end of our journey through these questions, it's worth returning to where we started. The 130,000 workers who lost their jobs in the tech industry, even as the companies they work for became more productive and more profitable through AI. Their situation is a microcosm of the larger tension we've been exploring. Is technological unemployment temporary or permanent? Is AI liberating us from drudgery or stealing our livelihoods? Will gains from automation be shared or hoarded? The answer, unsatisfyingly, is it depends. It depends on what we do. It depends on policies, on power, on cultural values, on the choices of companies and governments and individuals. The same technology can lead to very different outcomes depending on the context in which it's embedded. AI is a tool, an extraordinary powerful tool, but tools don't have inherent ethical valences. They take their meanings from how they're used. This might seem like a cop-out, a refusal to give a straight answer, but I think it's important to resist the determinism that often creeps into discussions about technology. We're told that automation is inevitable, that resistance is futile, that we just need to accept the future that's coming. But the future isn't coming, it's being built by human choices, and different choices would build different futures. The 130,000 workers who lost their jobs aren't statistics or abstractions. They're people with skills and hopes and obligations. Some will land on their feet, finding new opportunities that use their talents in new ways. Others will struggle, experiencing downward mobility and precarity. Their outcomes will depend partly on their own efforts and adaptability, but also on factors beyond their control. The state of the labour market, the availability of retraining, the generosity of unemployment benefits, the attitudes of hiring managers, the luck of being in the right place at the right time. Society has some obligation to these workers, not because they're victims, but because they're fellow citizens participating in a shared economic system. When that system generates disruption, the cost shouldn't fall entirely on those disrupted. Risk should be pooled, gains should be shared, transitions should be supported. This is what social insurance and safety nets are for, to ensure that economic change doesn't destroy lives, even as it transforms industries. But we also need to think beyond individual workers to the structure of the economy itself. If technological change is creating permanent unemployment or underemployment for significant portions of the population, then tinkering with social insurance isn't enough. We need to rethink how economic participation and material security relate, how we define contribution and value, and how we distribute the abundance that technology makes possible. These are not easy questions, and I don't pretend to have definitive answers, but I do think we need to approach them with clear eyes, without either naive techno-optimism or fatalistic pessimism. Technology creates possibilities, but societies choose which possibilities to realize. We've created an economic system that ties survival to employment. If employment becomes scarce, we can change the system rather than accepting mass deprivation. The question is whether we'll muster the political will and imagination to do so. There are reasons for hope. Throughout history, humans have adapted to enormous changes. We've built new institutions when old ones failed. We've extended circles of moral concern and solidarity. We've sometimes managed to ensure that progress benefits many rather than just few. We've made mistakes, to be sure, and there have been casualties. But we've also shown capacity for reflection, for course correction, for building something better out of the ruins of what came before. AI poses challenges, but it also offers opportunities. If we can figure out how to distribute its benefits, it could free us from material scarcity and open space for human flourishing. If we can use it to enhance rather than replace human capabilities, it could make work more meaningful and productive. If we can govern it democratically rather than allowing it to be controlled by narrow interests, it could serve broad social purposes. These are big ifs, but they're not impossible. The future of work, like all futures, is uncertain. But uncertainty is not the same as powerlessness. We can't predict exactly what will happen, but we can influence the probabilities, nudge trajectories, advocate for some outcomes over others. We can demand that companies consider social impacts before deploying automation. We can support policies that redistribute gains and provide security. We can build cultural narratives that value people beyond their market productivity. We can organize collectively to ensure workers have voice and power. None of this guarantees a good outcome. Power is real, and those who benefit from current arrangements will resist changes that threaten their interests. Technological momentum is real, and it's hard to slow or redirect once systems are built and deployed. Cultural inertia is real, and changing how people think about work and value takes generations. But acknowledging these obstacles isn't a reason for resignation. It's a reason for clear-headed strategic thinking about how to navigate them. The question, will AI steal our jobs or free us from work, poses a false dichotomy. It won't do one or the other. It will do both, and neither, and something more complicated. It will eliminate some jobs and create others. It will make some work more fulfilling and other work more degrading. It will free some people from drudgery and render others economically superfluous. The balance between these outcomes depends on choices, not on technological logic alone. So what should we do? There's no single answer that applies to everyone. For workers, the immediate imperative is adaptation, learning to use AI tools, developing skills that complement rather than compete with automation, building resilience and flexibility. But adaptation alone isn't sufficient. Workers also need to organize collectively to ensure they have power in shaping how AI is deployed, to demand training and transition support when jobs are eliminated, and to claim a share of productivity gains. For companies, the challenge is to deploy AI in ways that enhance rather than exploit workers, to consider long-term social impacts alongside short-term profits, to invest in the communities and workers that support them. This requires resisting the pressures of competition and shareholder maximization, which isn't easy. But companies are made of people who make choices, and those choices add up to corporate culture and strategy. Ethical deployment of AI is possible, even if it's not the default. For policymakers, the agenda is clear even if the politics are daunting. Strengthen safety nets, support education and retraining, regulate algorithmic management to protect workers, tax capital and wealth to fund public investments, experiment with policies like UBI, and create institutions that give workers and communities voice in technological governance. Different countries and regions will approach these differently based on their histories and values, but all need to grapple with them. For all of us, there's a need to think differently about work and value. We need to question the assumption that people must work to deserve survival or dignity. We need to recognize forms of contribution that don't generate market income. We need to build communities and institutions that provide meaning beyond employment, and we need to cultivate hope without naivety, skepticism without cynicism, urgency without panic. The 130,000 worker question is ultimately a question about what kind of society we want to be. Do we want a society where technology serves human flourishing, where gains are shared, where everyone has security and opportunity to develop their capacities? Or do we want a society where technology serves narrow interests, where gains are hoarded, where most people live precariously while a small elite prospers? We're building one or the other right now, through countless small decisions that aggregate into trajectories. The question isn't whether AI will change work, it's whether we'll shape that change toward justice. As we drift toward the edge of sleep, let these questions settle gently in your mind, not as burdens but as invitations to thought. The future isn't written. The story of work and AI is still being composed. You're part of that story, whether as a worker navigating change, as a leader making decisions, as a citizen participating in democracy, or simply as a person thinking about what matters. Your choices ripple outward. Your voice adds to the chorus. Your actions, however small they might seem, contribute to the world we're collectively building. There's no need to solve everything tonight. These are questions that will unfold over years and decades, but perhaps in turning them over gently, in allowing yourself to feel both the anxiety and the possibility they contain, you become a little more prepared to participate wisely in the transformations ahead. Perhaps you become a little more attuned to the moments where you have influence, the places where your choices matter. Perhaps you become a little clearer about what you value and what world you want to help create. The rhythm of your breath is slowing now. The questions are drifting, becoming softer, less urgent. You've held complex ideas with care, and now you can let them rest. The problems will still be there tomorrow, but for now, you've done the work of thinking, of considering, of staying open to complexity without demand for immediate resolution. That's enough. That's more than enough. Feel the weight of your body sinking into rest. Feel your mind loosening its grip on the problems and puzzles of the day. The world continues its slow transformation. Technologies advance, economies shift, societies grapple with change. But for this moment, this breath, this gentle descent towards sleep, you can let all of that be. You can trust that others are also thinking, also choosing, also building. You don't have to carry it all alone. In the morning, the questions about work and AI and the future will still be there, as will the need for clear thinking, ethical choices, and collective action. But the morning is far away. Between here and there lies sleep, that necessary refuge where the mind processes and integrates, where anxieties settle and creativity gestates, where the self restores itself. Give yourself to that process. Trust in the biological wisdom that knows how to heal and renew. Let the current of sleep carry you gently away from waking concerns. The 130,000 workers who lost their jobs, the millions more who worry about theirs, the future that's being built through technologies we barely understand, all of this will still be true tomorrow. But it doesn't need to keep you awake tonight. You've held these truths with care, you've thought about them seriously, and now you can release them, knowing that thinking about difficult things is important work, but so is rest. So is the renewal that comes from surrendering consciousness for a while. As you drift, imagine a future where work serves human flourishing, where technology enhances rather than diminishes lives, where economic security is a foundation for creativity and community. Imagine people pursuing what matters to them, developing their capacities, caring for each other, building things worth building. It might seem impossibly distant, but every journey begins with imagining the destination. And what we imagine, we sometimes create. Or imagine nothing at all. Just breathe, just drift. Just allow the day's thoughts to dissolve into the soft darkness behind your eyes. There's no work to do in sleep except the unconscious work of restoration. You've thought enough. You've felt enough. You've held the weight of complex questions with grace and seriousness. Now let them go. Let everything go. Let sleep arrive in its own time, gently and completely. If you enjoyed this quiet exploration of difficult questions, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought in the comments. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. But that can wait for waking. For now, just breathe. Just rest. Just allow yourself to drift into the darkness where sleep is waiting, patient and kind. The future is being built, but it will be built by people who are rested, who have taken time to restore themselves, who understand that wisdom requires both thinking and not thinking, both engagement and release. You've done the thinking. Now do the releasing. Trust that the morning will bring new energy, new clarity, new possibilities, but the morning is not here yet. Only sleep is here, only rest, only the gentle descent into darkness and renewal. Good night,